What's up, guys? Eternal Phoenix here, and we are finally getting around to Vinland Saga for the chapter reviews for manga. I'm really excited to start the series with you guys. The hope is that if we start a series at the very beginning, people who haven't been able to get caught up with a series will have an easier time getting into a show or getting into a manga by following along with me. So without further ado, let's get started. So Vinland Saga Chapter 1 kicks things off with a siege on a village, and this village has a fortress surrounding it, and it basically has a lakeside to the rear and land to the front, and the attackers are getting decimated, forcing them to retreat. And it's here that we're introduced to Askeladd, the leader of a group of Norse mercenaries, who upon seeing the invading Franks have the village outnumbered, decides to help the invading forces. And so he sends in Torfinn. So Torfinn is a adolescent Viking of about 14, 15 years in age, or at least that's what he looks like at this point in time. And he carries these twin daggers. And he's sending him to deliver a message to the leader of the invading force, essentially saying, hey, your tactics aren't working, we're going to assist you, or we're offering our service, but in return, we want half of the spoils of the battle. But Torfinn insists on being rewarded for this, which Askeladd replies that if negotiations go well, he'll get 3 gold. But Torfinn says that you already know what I want, or at least that Askeladd already knows what he wants from him. And he says, well, if that's what you want, you're going to need to bring me the head of a commander. So as Torfinn goes down to do the negotiations, we learn that being a Norman, he doesn't speak the same language as the Franks, which, I mean, that should have been kind of obvious. So he needs a translator, and they only speak Old Frankish, which is essentially the predecessor of modern day French. And he's actually hoping to be rewarded with his father's short sword, or at least that's what he tells the Lord. And the Lord says that if he's telling the truth, and that if they really have an army of Norse warriors and everything, that he'll be rewarded his share of spoils, or their share of spoils, in the name of Jesus Christ. Now, this is all fine and dandy, but also while being there, he says that, you know, if he's lying, they'll take his head, they'll kill him, essentially. And this is when Thorfinn speaks up and he says, well, they're expecting him to give a signal, and if he doesn't give the signal, then the Norse will just come down there anyway. And they don't really take too kindly to this, but they kind of let it slide. Now, the Lord actually has no intention of actually sharing the spoils with them, or at least not sharing the half of the riches that they get from them. And in actuality, the Lord itself, I mean, he's shown as just like this overweight, kind of cowardly man who just uses his authority as a noble to kind of just boss people around, from what it seems. But the following morning, as the battle breaks out, or as everything's about to come on their way, the Nords are nowhere to be seen. And again, the Lord goes through with this threat, and he says, your friends are a no-show, and if they don't show up at all, we're going to take your head, and you're going to be the centerpiece for my feast. Honestly, don't know why he's feasting, if he's been losing all these battles, but I digress. So it's a little bit later that we see that the reason why Askeladd and the Nords were late is because they decided to take their boats over the mountaintop. So the Franks' army, the only reason they didn't have their ships on the lakeside already is because there's actually a lot of narrow passageways and waterfalls, which make it difficult to get any boats to the backside of the fortress. And this is what the soldiers on the inside of the fortress were counting on, that they'd be protected to the rear. Unfortunately for them, the Nords had this brilliant idea to just carry it. So they just started running down the hill, down the mountaintop, and go towards the lakeside as fast as they can to do what they would see as a pincer maneuver, basically attacking from 2 fronts, with them being on the water and the Franks being on land, attacking from the front gate. Now, it's during all of this process that Thorfinn actually runs off into the battlefield, and at first they think that he's actually just trying to escape, he's trying to run away. But true to his word and true to what Askeladd requested, he's going after the commander. So when Askeladd goes in and he storms the beaches on the south side of the fortress, the commander notices this and sends some of his crossbow soldiers towards the rear to try and defend the beach. And this does not go well, actually. They get completely destroyed. Askeladd and his soldiers pull up and they slaughter everybody from the small part of the army that was sent over there and the villagers that were in that area. even going as far to say that they didn't even put up a fight. And another cool moment during this time frame is that Askeladd actually takes a hatchet and he throws it with such accuracy and speed that he actually snipes one of the archers or one of the fellow crossbowmen and archers that were up there trying to shoot at them, and he decapitates him. So during all of this ruckus caused in the rear and all the fighting going on in the front, their tactics of the tactics of the soldiers in the city are completely coming apart, and Thorfinn has actually made his way to the top of the wall. And it's at this point that he slaughters 3 or 4 soldiers, and then, true to his word, he takes the commander's head, with it falling over into the moat with Thorfinn jumping after it. And this is actually the last that we see of Thorfinn for a couple pages. Now, since Thorfinn's taken the commander's head and we have Askeladd on the beaches, everything seems to be going well. In fact, it's going so well that the Lord and his army are eventually able to break down the front gate. And upon arriving, what they expected to see was the remainder of the troops. However, Askeladd and his warriors have completely killed everyone on the inside of the town. And so it's at this point the Lord's like, yes, I've won, I've got this victory. Like, with these mercenaries on my side, no one can beat me. But he also notices that because they were able to destroy an army that even the Franks were having trouble with at this point, that if the Nords were ever to be an enemy of the Franks, it might be a challenge. So he says that we must get rid of them, essentially. So when they're taking their spoils, they'll have to go back over the mountains with their boats because it'll be too hard to travel on the lake. And so that's where they'll get them. But he's distracted by this because when he goes to check out the spoils, he sees that everything has been taken. For Askeladd and his men are already on the boats, and you see Askeladd has all of the treasure, and he's covered in, like, he has a crown and robes and jewelry, and he says to the Lord, we've given you this victory, we've won this victory, so we'll leave you with the victory, and we will humbly take the treasure. And they try to escape with the treasure, and of course this pisses off the Lord, and the Franks want to get their treasure back. And it's also at this time that they think that Thorfinn is dead because they haven't seen him since the battle ended. But at all this time, he's been swimming back towards the boats with the head of the commander. And once he gets on the boat, he challenges Askeladd to a duel as Thorfinn, son of Thor's warrior of Iceland, to avenge his father's death. Meaning that Askeladd, I guess, either killed his father or has something to do with the death of his father. And Askeladd accepts this challenge as son of Olaf and descendant of Artorius. And Artorius in real life history was a Roman officer, which kind of makes sense because Askeladd wears a chest plate that is very similar to that of a Roman chest plate. It has the abs built into the chest plate, which was a common thing in some Roman armors. Well, I don't want to say all, but in most Roman armors, and then what you see in like movies and everything. And it was just basically done as a tactic to kind of have the armies think that they were stronger men or just more threatening than they actually were. But I digress. So Askeladd says, I accept your challenge, but it's going to have to wait because we are getting hunted down by the Franks. They're shooting at them and they're trying to cut them off before they can escape all of the treasure. And then this is where the chapter kind of comes to a head and comes to an end. It does flash back and forth a bit to the soldiers of the Franks army who had stayed with the boats because they were unable to travel on the lakeside due to all the natural defenses that I spoke of earlier. But what they talk about while over there is that because the Normanni or the Nords have the boat heads that look like dragons, they assumed there was a real dragon when they saw them carrying it over the mountain, and they're actually terrified of this. So when the Normanni actually get back towards that way, they're terrified and they run off. And it closes out the chapter speaking about how the Normanni went by many names, and this was the age of the Normanni, and they went by like the Danes or the Ros or Ross by some, but to a lot of people they're now known as Vikings. And that closes out Vinland Saga chapter 1. So this was Eternal Phoenix giving my review of chapter 1. I hope you guys enjoyed. If there's anything that I can do to make this experience better, or if there's anything that you think I could have done better, just tell me in the comments, because I want to make this as enjoyable as possible, especially for people who are newer to the manga series, or just they watch the show and now they want to get into the manga. And I'm hoping that doing this chapter by chapter, that hopefully it'll be an easier process for you guys to get into it. But with all that said, Eternal Phoenix signing out.